Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about this normalized issue in our houseplant community, which is theft. We are going to talk a little bit about poaching today, but I'm not going to get too into it because I do not know enough about it. I do just want to say, please make sure you hit like and subscribe. Maybe you've been binge watching my videos and you just forgot to hit that subscribe button. Welcome to the community. I also have YouTube memberships, which you can check out by hitting that join button or the link in the description. And I know a lot of people like to joke about this topic in the plant community, but I would urge all of us here to put on our serious caps right now. This is an issue that I'm super duper passionate about. And just for full transparency, a couple times at the beginning of my houseplant collecting journey from big box stores, I took baby tiny cuttings. So just for full transparency, I don't want to sit here and be like, wow, I'm holier than thou. And I just want to let you know that if you've done this before, it's not too late to stop now if you still do it, because most people don't even see it as stealing or theft, which is why I want to talk about this topic. And we aren't just going to be talking about prop lifting. We're also going to be talking about actual plant theft, cases of plant theft that have been documented, people who are in jail because they stole plants, people who have gone through serious consequences because they stole plants or tried to internationally trade plants that are protected by sites, which I will also talk about later in this video. Basically, this is your complete rendition of everything you need to possibly know about houseplant theft. I also should probably say this. I know that there are a lot bigger issues in the world right now than houseplant theft, but it's something that I'm really passionate about, and so that's why I'm talking about this. I hope I'm not coming across like this is the biggest issue in the world right now, because it's not at all. I'm just trying to spread awareness because a lot of people don't know that they're actually stealing, and a lot of people don't know that they could actually go to jail. So I just want to keep the plants safe and the people safe, so that's why we're making this video. I guess let's just get into it. So the overarching issue, right? Why do I feel like I need to talk about this? My biggest thing is because it's normalized. There are houseplant meme pages that post about this type of thing. It'll be a meme of like the guy in the corner at a party and it's like they don't know I took cuttings of their plants. Like there'll be an article about a lady who went to jail for taking, like serially taking cuttings from expensive nurseries, and she's in jail, and someone would be like, ha ha ha, me. And it's something that people joke about, I think, without knowing that it's serious. And a lot of people like to write it off as being like, wow, it's the internet, you just need to develop a harder skin, people are gonna joke about it. And I understand people are gonna joke about it because it's plants. We all want plants. If we could have it our way, we would all probably own one of every single plant in this entire world, right? The reason this is a huge deal to me specifically is because not only are species going extinct because there are people who do actually steal and poach plants, unironically, there are people who bring plants into their state or country that are invasive species that will take over and ruin flora and fauna just so that that person can have a rare plant. So the reason that I actually think that this happens, because there is a reason for everything, am I right? People don't really see, in my opinion, plants as merchandise because it's a living organism. They know that all they need is just one node, and hey, what does one node hurt logistically, right? But they don't see it as stealing because it's not the full thing. All they're doing is taking maybe one or two nodes off of like a Lowe's plant or a Home Depot plant, and how they justify it is, oh, those plants get thrown out anyways. A lot of times people justify it by taking cuttings of the plants that are on clearance, and I honestly think that there are levels to this. I don't think that taking cuttings from Lowe's is necessarily as serious as taking cuttings from your local nursery, which is run by a locally owned business, and those people put a lot of time and effort into growing those plants, and a lot of people justify it, I've seen, by saying, oh, well, I'm just like sticking it to the man, like these big corporations can SMA, like I don't care about them. Lowe's and Home Depot don't care about their houseplants. They buy them and they bring them in, and half of them die on the way there, and the rest of them they just try to like sell while they're still alive before they have to throw them on clearance. My issue is when people actively steal knowing that it's wrong from nurseries or the wild. And we're gonna talk a little bit about some high profile cases of this happening in the last 3 years. I also did a ton of polls of my audience that you are gonna wanna see. I'm gonna talk about that more to the end of this video, so make sure you stay to check that out. So the first part of this video that I really wanna get into is why people steal. There's a specific ideology behind why these specific people like to steal these plants, and I'm going to read to you a blog post from a researcher. It was posted in 2014 and it was posted to Dieter Weber, a material science and engineer. He opens the article by saying, "My grandma once told me that giving plants as a gift is bad luck. She said that plants have to be bought or they are best stolen." For a long time I was puzzled by that, but in fact I realized that she was right. Then he calls it the thieves approach. So he's very hyper aware of what's going on. So then he says, just borrow, with air quotes, cuttings from friends and family. Firstly, the plant that's already survived in people's homes is therefore a proven plant. It's very interesting to me to hear from someone who actively and is telling the world that they borrow plants. Firstly, the plant has already survived in other people's homes and is thus a proven plant. Second, if a small cutting fails, there's not much lost. If you actually stole the cutting, nobody even knows that you had it, so you can just toss the plant without regret, which I find really interesting because he's deriving regret in this situation from other people knowing that he had it, therefore there's regret because other people know that he let a plant die, instead of just regretting that you killed a plant because of the fact that now the plant's dead. Then he has this photo of himself posing with this huge ripsalis that he borrowed from a friend. He doesn't necessarily say that he borrowed with quotes around it, so it is possible that a friend did give him a cutting of this plant, but how he chooses to define borrowing is just a fancy way of saying stealing, so it's entirely possible that he went over to a friend's house and took a small cutting and didn't tell them. Which, if a friend came over to my house and did that, I'd be like, why didn't you just ask me? I probably would have given you a cutting. So I don't know how I missed recording this the first time through, but he actually closes that article by saying, "In conclusion, my grandma was right. Plants given as gifts will hardly flourish. Stolen cuttings give the best results." So in case the message wasn't clear enough through reading it with the quotes around borrowing, he flat out says stolen cuttings give the best results at the end there. So that is one of the thought processes behind plant theft, is that not spending a lot of money, it's cost effective and it's regret effective apparently. If it survives, then you know that you can probably take care of it. And there's not much lost necessarily, except for the fact that you are stealing from your friends and family in the selfish way of you are not having to waste your time by searching for plants, because the reason he says that this is the best way to shop for plants is because you might not know what does best in your environment. He's recommending borrowing small cuttings from different places to see what works best for you. This is only effective if you're extremely selfish and you don't want to actually do anything for yourself. You don't want to spend your own money. You'd rather borrow from someone else's spent money, and you'd rather borrow their time and their energy and their resources. Let's talk about real fast how absolutely normalized this is in our community. I'm sure that all of us know at least someone who in their life has done this, which is frustrating. I think the reason that all this goes back to is actually plant blindness, which was a phrase coined, let me find this, was a phrase coined and first described by Wandersee and Schuessler in 1999. So I do just want to say that while they've officially coined the term as plant blindness, I don't support that name, because plant blindness is used to refer to people mistreating plants and hurting them, stealing them, whatever, carving their names into them because they're blind to the fact that the plants are actually worth something. This insinuates that being blind is a bad thing, whereas people who are actually blind, people who are in the capital B blind community, find that they're very proud of the fact that they're blind and it's their only way that they know life. This is a whole topic of conversation that is not for this video, but I just wanted to let you guys know that probably don't say plant blindness, because being blind isn't bad, and that is what it's being used as in this situation. I think instead we should start saying plant unawareness or something else to that effect in order to better respect the blind and disabled community. It's the misguided anthropocentric ranking of plants as inferior to animals, that they're less important, that you can just kind of like take and cut from whatever. When you take a cutting of a plant, it damages the plant and it prevents growth. So while places like Lowe's and Home Depot probably aren't going to see any type of loss there because people will still buy the plant, at an actual local nursery, if you were to just take a cutting of a Melanochrysum or a Monstera albo or any of these incredibly rare plants, you're effectively halting its growth for a number of months. Wow, you're probably thinking, Ashley, no one would do that. Literally no one would take a cutting of a plant that rare? Well, let me direct you to the potted elephant, okay? So the potted elephant is one of my very favorite houseplant shops in all of Oregon. I absolutely love Corey and his entire team. I've met them multiple times. I've given them so much money. And I will link the potted elephant in the description if you live in Oregon and you want to go schedule yourself an appointment. They have private greenhouse sales now, so you can go shop with peace of mind. Basically what happened is they were having their usual greenhouse sale, ones that I used to attend all of the time. As one of the last people was leaving the greenhouse, he noticed she had a rather big bag, and normally what happens is you go there and then you check out on your way out and then you leave. One girl was leaving, and so he asked if he could check her bag, and when he checked her bag, he found 13 limp plant cutting. And I'm going to read to you what all of those plant cuttings were from this post on their Instagram. First and foremost, a Monstera. I think that is a Thai constellation. I can't tell if it's an albo or a Thai constellation. We have, I think, a philodendron, hastatum silver sword. There is a melanochrysum. There is a, looks like a squamiferum, syngonium albo podophyllum, a standaleyana albo, another rare syngonium I don't know the name of, Scindapsus trubii dark form, which are notoriously slow growers. I think that's a Rhaphidophora heyi. There's a couple other there that are just kind of hard to read. And the post reads, "Dear community, recently at an event hosted at our greenhouse, an individual vandalized and committed theft with several of our plants. They were caught, but sadly many of the plants that they are taken will not survive the damage that was done to them." And of course, Corey's not talking about the plants that were cut from. He's talking about these new plant cuttings now that will all probably die. We are thankful to the Washington County Sheriff Office for their prompt response and arrest of the individual who, with the recorded evidence we were able to provide, we are pressing charges. This is something that happens all of the time. It's incredibly difficult because it's really hard to argue, well, that person got those from me, I don't have them and now they do, when that person can just turn around and say, well, I just bought them off Etsy and Instagram, and how could you ever know that they're exactly the same? Especially if they cut them down, repot them, and they look unrecognizable from how they were when they were originally stolen. Because anyone could have just done it, right? So this article was posted on Wednesday, January 15th in 2020. It was one of the first things in 2020 that was like, wow, that is seriously terrible, especially because the potted elephant is so precious to me and the Portland houseplant community. Another extremely high-profile thief case came from Silver Chrome Gardens, a wholesale, and I'm quoting the article while I'm reading this. The Silver Chrome Gardens, a wholesale specialty nursery in Homestead, Florida. The heist took place while the major orchid collectors convention was in town. The owner, Bill Rodolante, who, if you don't know who Bill Rodolante is, he actually goes by William Rodolante, and then also he is on the board of directors for the International Aroid Society, and he's the president of Silver Chrome Gardens. I also have heard that he pioneers a lot of aroid research and also hybridizations, so he's kind of a big deal. We have in the past had people walk in the nursery and ask to buy some of our stock plants, and when we say no, later that night, sometimes people cut the fence on the greenhouse and the plants that were asked about are suddenly stolen. This happens often, especially to the Rodolante nursery. And actually earlier this year, or if it wasn't this year, it was, I think, at the end of 2020, guy walked into the Rodolante nursery and walked out with an entire, like, laundry basket type of thing with just full of plants. For those of you who are like, no one would ever steal that kind of thing, or for those of you who are like, well, I would only ever, you know, I just take little cuttings from like Home Depot or Lowe's because screw the corporations, like that's just one step away from feeling like it's okay to steal this kind of stuff. And actually, who says that best is Georgia Wilson, who, if you don't know, she's Plants and Things, and she's also corresponding officer, I think, for the International Aroid Society. But she says taking a succulent leaf from the ground at the Home Depot floor isn't hurting anyone, but that's just one step away from taking a cutting, and that's one step away from, oh, I'm at this botanical garden, I'll just take a cutting of this. It's a really slippery slope. If you don't know who she is, she's absolutely amazing. Georgia is wonderful. She runs the Plants and Things Instagram, and she's a huge pivotal part of the plant community in just so many ways, not just on Instagram. The last high profile case I want to talk about is succulent poachers. On June 3rd, 2019, this article was posted by the Washington Post. On Friday, 3 men were charged with stealing more than $600,000 worth of wild succulents from public lands and attempting to smuggle them into Asia. It says that this bust was part of a huge crackdown on succulent poachers who are believed to be part of an international smuggling ring. So for those of you who are like, okay, well actually there's a difference between, you know, taking a cutting from like a Home Depot and then, you know, the next step stealing from a nursery and then the next step stealing from a botanical garden. There's kind of an international problem going on, wouldn't you probably say? And we'll go into some kind of like laws that don't really make sense that I think are kind of funny. Just to kind of get serious again for a second, the reason I have rewritten this video. Like this is my thing that I did yesterday. This one I did 3 weeks ago. I have been writing and rewriting and planning out this video for about 3 months now. I really want it to be done right, and I don't want to come at it from like an angry perspective, but I'm so angry. I'm angry that this is just a thing. Even today on my local Facebook page, it was posted that a girl is having to do 600 hours or something for trying to smuggle in over 600 different species into New Zealand in her stockings. She tried to smuggle them in, and a girl in the comment section was like, wow, CNN really has a heart up for trying to find some articles to report on. Man, I would do the same thing. And I try to be like, no, this is actually a serious issue. And someone commented and responded and they were like, that person understands that this is a serious issue, they're just joking about it. And they don't think it's a serious issue because people who think that kind of thing is a serious issue don't make fun of a news agency for reporting on the news. So I just guess it is my observation that this is ingrained in houseplant culture. Wow, wish I could do that. Wish I could just steal X, Y, or Z. There is an Instagram, it's called Planty. He posts some really funny memes. But one of them he posted got a ton of people admitting where they've stolen plants from in the past, how they've done it. By the way, I do just want to say that I don't hold Plantyhose responsible for those comments. All of those comments are people just admitting things that they've done. He was making a joke about something that is relatable in the houseplant community, and that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is that stealing plants is so relatable in the houseplant community that people talk about it freely, forgetting that it is an actual crime, especially when you're stealing from your neighbors or you have to walk onto someone's private property. If you steal from someone's private property, I'll get into it, but it's a whole different animal. There was also a TikTok posted to a pretty famous TikToker's account. I won't say their name because they've actually taken the TikTok down. I don't want to get them in trouble, right? Because they clearly feel bad, but it was them going around with their partner and taking clippings of neighbors' plants to grow inside their own house. So they filmed themselves committing property damage to their neighbors, and then they posted it to TikTok and it got a lot of views. So that has since been taken down, but all I'm trying to say here is that it is relatable in our community to steal. And that's a problem, and I don't think enough people talk about it because I don't think people actually realize that it is stealing and property damage. By the way, did you know that's super illegal for like 5 different reasons, which we'll get into when we start to talk about the laws? But there's this thing, and I understand wanting to joke, right? We make light as people, we have to take a step back. We have to make light of serious situations so that we don't absolutely go crazy. But have we really stopped and thought about maybe we're making fun of this a little too much? Maybe this is just a little bit too normalized. Maybe this is something that a little too many people do in our community. And maybe this is unfortunately a part of our community's culture. I don't think enough people have really thought about that. Plant theft is very old. It has been going on since probably the beginning of time, in the beginning of the houseplant hobby, way back in the day. Poaching is absolutely not new, and obviously there is a huge difference between taking a cutting from a plant at Lowe's and poaching. Poaching is when someone goes to a different place and they steal some plants and then they go back to their other place. In order to prevent poaching, which I'm not going to get into the issue of poaching, it is so controversial. A lot of plants aren't protected by sites that probably should be. In case you don't know what CITES is, let me just elaborate for you. CITES stands for Convention of International Trade and Endangered Species. CITES protects plants from being traded internationally. They're either critically endangered or they are near extinct. It is a global agreement among governments to regulate or ban international trade of species under threat. It bans international trade. It does not ban inter-country trade. To trade a plant internationally that is protected by CITES, you need a CITES-specific phytosanitary certificate. There are phytosanitary certificates, and then there are CITES certificates. And it's much harder to get a CITES certificate than it is to get a phytosanitary certificate. And there's also different rules in each country for what someone has to do with a plant that they want to trade to a different country. For example, there is a very specific time frame in which you are not allowed to trade that plant once it gets back to its own country. I will include a link in the description down below so you can read through the entire list of plants that are protected by CITES. You're gonna see a lot of really familiar names, but you're also not gonna see a lot of names you would expect to see, which is troubling to me. Appendix 1 plants cannot be commercially traded, period. Appendix 2 plants or Appendix 3 plants can be commercially traded, but they will require permits and certificates. By the way, CITES just doesn't protect plants, it also protects fauna as well. So that's gonna be animals. Appendix 1 includes species threatened with extinction and provides the greatest level of protection, including restrictions on commercial trade. For example, gorillas, sea turtles, lady slipper orchids, which are Paphiopedilums, and giant pandas. Appendix 2 includes species that, although are not currently threatened, may become so without trade controls. It also includes species that resemble other listed species that need to be regulated in order to effectively control the trade of those other listed species. Appendix 3 includes species for which a range country has asked other parties to help in controlling international trade. This includes map turtles, walruses, and Cape stag beetles. So basically, there's these 3 different tiers of plants that, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't internationally trade. And again, remember, the key word here is internationally, unless it's on Appendix 1, and then in some cases you might not even be able to buy it in your country. Like gorillas, don't buy gorillas. So here's a little excerpt on CITES talking about illegal trade. So it says, while some illegal trade is out of ignorance and some is petty, much is done in organized rings not unlike drug rings with suppliers in developing countries, shippers and financiers and retail distributors in developed countries. Some illegal traders use legitimate business as fronts. The most recent channel for trade is the internet. Here's the fun thing with CITES though. There is actually this little flow chart, which I will link in the description, and it is posted by CITES of Appendix 1 plants. Remember, Appendix 1 plants are the most endangered plants in the world, supposedly. So you can go look at this in the description, but there are certain instances of when you might have a CITES protected plant that you actually don't need a CITES certificate. This is a lot of information, I'm sorry. Okay, so here's how CITES defines an artificially propagated plant. Characteristics of artificially propagated plant specimens are 1, grown under controlled conditions, and 2, grown from seeds, cuttings, divisions, callus tissues, or other plant tissues, spores, or their propagals that are either exempt from the provisions of the convention or have been derived from cultivated parental stock. Grown from seeds, saplings, cuttings, grafting, microting, air layering, divisions, plant tissues, propagals, blah, 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 blah. If a rare plant like this is grown as an artificially propagated cutting, it is exempt in most situations from being protected by CITES, which means that it can be internationally traded. So then it also says that the plants are either exempt from the provisions of the convention or have been derived from cultivated parental stock. And then CITES defines cultivated parental stock, breeding stock, or an ensemble of plants grown under controlled conditions that are used for reproduction, which must have been to the satisfaction of designated CITES authorities of the exporting country, either 1, established in accordance with the provision of CITES and the relevant national laws in a manner not detrimental to the survival of the species in the wild, which basically means, hey, over here we're growing these plants, and these plants getting sold and traded don't affect the plants in the wild that are being sold and traded, because we're trading these artificially propagated plants instead of the real thing that's growing out in the wild. A lot of these different countries care about this issue, and you probably should too. Just because one plant might have been illegally traded doesn't mean that there isn't a possibility to find a plant that meets the CITES definition for artificially propagated, and that plant is then safe to own. Okay, so let's say that you have a CITES protected plant, right? What protects inter-country trade? So in America, we have the Endangered Species Act, or the ESA, and this was enacted in 1973 to protect endangered and threatened species from going extinct. extinct. This prevents you from importing, exporting, taking, possessing, selling, or transporting any of these species. So if you do those things, you can face imprisonment and a fine up to $50,000. Civil violation of a major provision may result in a $25,000 fine or a $12,000 fine. They have different rules with plants, which is very interesting. So basically, according to the Scientific American, did you know that it is often legal to buy, sell, and trade endangered species of plants through the mail? In fact, the ESA often encourages national trade of plants with the correct certificates of endangered species in order to further conservation. So basically it says that plant sales and private cultivation are very encouraged among the ESA, recognizes the commercial propagation is often essential to the survival of some of the listed species. By the way, I didn't say this, I didn't see any. It's possible that there are some applications that are currently going through to try to protect some of these plants on sites, but there is no Araceae protected on sites, which means like philodendron, anthurium, all that stuff is not protected by sites internationally. So basically, as long as you have a ESA permit to sell, trade, propagate, and just own and transport endangered plant species, it is completely legal to do so. However, the Scientific American also states that most people who sell plants on eBay and Etsy, where most of illegal plant trade goes down in America, most people do not actually have those permits to be selling and trading those species. You will be so happy to learn that no anthurium, alocasia, or philodendron are on the list of the ESA's stuff. I haven't checked Hoya yet. Let's check Hoya. No Hoya. What about begonia? Begonias. Basically, most of the plants that are traded very, very commonly among houseplant collectors or easily bought on the internet, which is really good news. It means that, hey, we're all doing legal stuff here. There are, however, 2 different peperomia species on the list, which is very interesting. There you have the plant laws. I find it very interesting that after doing all this research and coming out of the other side, to learn that specifically Philodendron spiritus sancti is not listed as an endangered plant on either sites, nor the Endangered Species Act. Is confusing, right? We are told often, I feel like, that Philodendron spiritus sancti is critically endangered, but it's not actually listed anywhere as being endangered. And CITES was last updated, I think it said August 2020. Yeah, CITES was updated on August 28th, 2020. So it's up to date. The Endangered Species Act is up to date. So why aren't these plants, which are most likely endangered, on these acts? So I reached out to a conservationalist about this topic because I wanted to get the opinion of someone who actually knows a lot about conservation and these laws. They asked to not be identified because they are not interested in participating in controversies, real or not, of internet plant flora. They basically said they doubt that there is much appetite for listing any other aeroids, all tropical forest canopy dependent species are, by definition, endangered species. My take on what they talked to me about is that because these plants are so wildly traded now in artificially propagated plant stock internationally, there is little desire to put those plants on sites, because all that would do is just make it harder to trade them. But that is just my opinion and my take on what this person said to me. It appears that a lot of people are doing a lot for conservation, and that a lot of people believe that conservation is getting it out to as many people as they can with artificially prepared stock so that people can own these and we can keep the wildlife where the wildlife belongs, which is kind of a bridge between the two worlds, and I think that that's kind of nice. You might be thinking, Ashley, this video is over now. It's been so long. Well, you would be surprised. I have polls for you. I'm very proud of this. I did a poll of my audience a couple months ago, back when I first thought of doing this video as an idea. I got a lot of people to participate in this polls. I got an amazing sample size, actually. All right, I have the polls. Are you ready? So here we have, I'm gonna read you the questions and then I'm gonna tell you the results. But you're also gonna see them on the screen. So if you've been listening to this like it's a podcast this whole time, I would look at your screen now because there's gonna be some polls flashing on the screen. Do you think taking cuttings from big box stores is okay? 24% of you said yes, and 76% of you said no. It doesn't sound that significant until you realize that 776 people said yes, and 2,398 people said no. Over the course of this entire survey, my estimate is, because not every person answered every question, but my estimate is that we had over 4,000 unique participants in this poll, which is incredible because we actually got some decent data here. 776 people said that they think it's okay to steal from big box stores. And by the way, I am not shaming anyone here. I did unfortunately do this before someone pointed out to me that that's not okay. It's merchandise just like everything else. But I'm not doing this to shame or make fun of the people who have these opinions. These are of course their opinions and they can do whatever they want, honestly. I'm just here to give you the results of this poll. Have you at any point ever taken a cutting of a plant that wasn't yours? This time, 28% of people said yes and 72% of people said no. That's a difference of 200 different results. On the last question, when I asked, do you think it's okay to take cuttings from big box stores? 776 people said yes. When I then asked, have you ever taken a cutting of a plant that wasn't yours? 910 people then said yes. This is just so interesting to me. Do you think taking cuttings from stores without permission is okay? This time we had a big difference. Only 8 people said yes, which is 274 people. 3,050 people said no. Would you do it anyways if no one was around and it was a dream plant? This time, 15% of people said yes. That is a 7% increase of people who said they wouldn't do it, but now would do it if no one would see them and it was a dream plant. That is 500 people who said that they would steal a rare plant cutting. I asked people's reasoning for why they thought it was okay to take cuttings from big box stores. Some of the answers include, big box stores have huge profits and don't care for their plants. I'd rather buy though. Someone said I've taken cuttings from the mall because they just die, no one takes care of them. I feel like they're better with me. Someone said I used to when I didn't know any better, but now I know and so I don't. Never taken from cuttings of plants while on a hike in a park. 19 people said yes, which is 610 votes for yes and 2,500 votes for no. But that's rounding down because it's 2,594, which is nearly 2,600. And I'm betting that most of you don't know this, that it is very illegal to take plants from state parks. Did you know that you can actually get jail time for that? Mega fines for that? Well, 45% of you said no, which is 1,236 people. Oh, sorry, I read that backwards. Those are the people who did know that it was illegal. 1,497 of you did not know that that was illegal. Have you ever taken cuttings from a friend's plant without them knowing? 4% of you said yes, which is 116 people. 3,086 of you said no. Did you used to think that taking plant cuttings was okay, but now you've changed your mind? 31% of people said yes and 69% of people said no. That's 710 votes for yes and 1,565 votes for no. So then I asked, what made you realize that it wasn't okay? Someone said, I took cuttings from a few plants early on, but then I found out it's bad when I joined the plant community. Someone said, the only plant I've ever taken a cutting from was on a hike in a national park, but I didn't know that it was illegal and now I feel terrible. Then I asked, have you ever taken any cuttings from a neighbor's yard without asking? 6% of you said yes, 94% of you said no. I said, did you also know that it is illegal as property damage and trespassing and also theft? 840 people said no, they did not know what it is. Then I said, have you ever been caught for stealing plants or clippings? I got a 1% of yes, which is 14 people. So those are the results of the poll. I think that they're really interesting, even though it might be such a small number, 15% of people that say it's okay, but then that translates to 776. Like, that's wild. So all of this is really to say houseplant theft is a lot more common than I think a lot of people understand it to be. People joke about this with the intention of sharing their story and laughing with other people about their story, and then they go out and do it again. All of this is really just to say that the ethics surrounding the collection and hobby of houseplant culture definitely has theft ingrained into it, which is why these articles of law like CITES and the Endangered Species Act exist, is in order to regulate the illegal sale and trade of these plants. If you want to look at all the stuff that I did, I will be linking every single article I read on the topic down in the description below. I think that it's really important to educate yourself on this to really see how rampant of a problem it is, and these are only the reported cases. The reason for making this video is because I want to educate you and anyone watching this video on the different laws surrounding plant theft and how deep this really goes. Is stealing that one little cutting really worth it? Or could you live without it? Or could you just buy it since it's probably just $5 up to $15 at a big box store? Do you need a Monstera elbow so bad that you're willing to steal from a local business? In my opinion, you don't, but that is just my opinion. Please, I would love to hear all questions, comments, and concerns in the comment section down below. If I got any law wrong in this video, please let me know as soon as possible so I can update my description to say that I got something wrong. I have been researching this for months. I have over like 20 different articles I've been reading from, and I've talked to some people on the topic of it to, you know, get as much information as I possibly can. About 99% certain that everything I've told you in this video is factual. I'm sure that there is a little bit more law surrounding endangered species, but you guys don't have to worry because in America at least, philodendron, anthurium, alocasia are not listed as endangered species, which means you legally can't get in trouble for trading them nationally. It's a little different on an international scale, and then moral and ethically, should you own endangered species? That's a completely different topic of conversation. I would love to do more videos like this, so if you liked this video, please let me know by hitting that like button or subscribing. I intend to make more videos like this in the future. I also create daily houseplant content with the exception of sometimes taking a day or two off to be a person. I would really like to know your thoughts, so please let me know your thoughts, whether or not you agreed or disagreed. And other than that, thank you so much for watching. I have a membership program which you can check out if you're interested. But other than that, I'll see you in the next houseplant section. Bye.